Hooty hoo, all my stock market gamblers. Welcome today. I'm Tall Mike. I'm so glad you're here. Well, what's going on? What's going on? All right. So we've had two down weeks in the S&P, two down weeks in the QQQ, the NASDAQ. Okay, so the market is now topping out, right? And starting to roll over. NVIDIA is starting to show cracks. Apple is already broken, and Apple usually leads the NASDAQ. But now NVIDIA has took over in the leadership role, but even that is starting to show cracks. Market's starting to get excited. Remember, we talk about the 20-day moving average. We have to break below that before this market will give some back. I think it'll give back, well, 10, 15, 20%. We'll see what it does. But the NASDAQ has already come down below the 20-day, and the S&P is sitting right above the 20-day. So it's starting to come back down. Okay, so the Fed announcement coming out this week, right? Fed talks on Wednesday. Of course, they're not going to change interest rates, but it could be very interesting because they might even take the June interest rate cut off the market. You see, the market is pricing in 6 interest rate cuts this year. Now, the Fed, they're admitting 3, but I think they're going to pull back to 2 or 1. And then the market's really going to freak out if we actually have to raise rates again, because inflation, what's happened? Well, inflation is coming back. It's accelerating back. So this is going to change the whole dynamics of the market. We may get a freak out in the market relatively soon. Now, this is just my take. The Moon Boys, they'll tell you this isn't a problem. We're just going to head straight up, and that's fine. That's their take. They can leave me a comment and tell me if we get to 1 million in Bitcoin or whatever we do. Those Moon Boys, love the Moon Boys. Nothing against you guys. All right, so let's get over to the real estate market. Well, the real estate market I'm going to talk about today is a little bit different. I'm going to talk about, are you house rich? Are you house poor? Now, a lot of people who got locked in at 2.8%, they think they're house rich. Okay, and they may be, right? But the people that bought in the last year, they think they're house poor. Why? Because they can't afford the house. They're not affordable. But what's really happened to houses? Have houses gone up as much as you think? Actually, it's more the debasement of the currency. And I want to talk a little bit about the debasement of the currency, of the US dollar, if you will. Now, Main One Event, he left me a comment. He thinks that my 1-to-1 with the Dow is a little bit conservative. He thinks 500 ounces of silver to buy the average price home is a little bit conservative. And it may well be. Main One Event may be right. But what he pointed out, which is very interesting, you see, back in the 60s, if you retired and you got Social Security, well, you could survive. You could live out your life in dignity, right? Now, let's say today where 30% of the people aged 55 to 65 have 0% saved for retirement. So they're depending completely on Social Security. Well, what's their life going to look like? They can't survive. You can't survive on Social Security. You would have to leave the country. You'd have to go to a third world country. Now, pretty soon you'll be able to stay here because we are becoming a third world country. All right. So, but anyways, back then in the 60s, even the 70s, you could survive on Social Security. But what's happened? We've debased the value of the dollar. The dollar is not worth as much. We printed and printed and printed and printed. Okay, let me get you an example to point this out even more so, right? Okay, all right, so in 1971, the average price, well, the price of gold in 1971 was $35. But how much did people make? Now, these are just round numbers. They're not exact, but approximately the average person made about $10,000 a year. $10,000 a year. Price of gold was $35, right? So rough numbers, once again, that's about, for the year, he was making about 275 ounces of gold. That's what he was making. You see, back until 71, we had a gold-based currency, right? It's backed by gold. But then Nixon in 71 took us off that, and we've had over 50 years of just debasing the currency. Okay, so what does the average person make today? What does the average person make in approximately rough numbers? Let's call it 60,000. 60,000. So in 71 you were making 10,000, and today you're making 60,000 average income, right? Okay, $60,000. All right. Well, what is that really? Six times. It went up six times. 10,000, 71, 60,000 now. Okay, what does an ounce of gold cost now? Roughly, I'm going to use a rough number. Let's call it 2,200. 2,200. Okay, so now back in this 1971, you could survive with one person working. Your wife didn't have to work. You could have a couple of kids, and you could have a fairly decent lifestyle. Middle class, you'd send your kids to nice schools, and you'd live in a nice house, and you'd have two new cars in the driveway, and your wife did not have to go to work. She'd stay home and raise the children. That's how it was done back then. Now, I know that's foreign to a lot of you young people, but that's actually how we lived pretty much. But if you fast forward to today, both people have to work. They're struggling to buy a house. They can't get new cars. They have to get used cars. They can't pay their bills. They're behind on all their bills. They're behind on their utility bills. They're behind on their car payments. They're behind on their house payment. Their credit cards maxed out, right? And they're behind. They're delinquent on their credit cards. Now, I know some of you rich people, you think that everybody's rich. Well, they're not. They're not rich. Most people are actually going toward the poor side. Now, if you have a lot of assets, inflation does really well for you. You debase the currency, your assets go up, and you live a lavish lifestyle. But the other 80, 90% of the people, they're struggling, right? They're struggling. They can't get their bills paid. They can't save for retirement. That's why 30% of the people have zero savings for retirement. They're going to be dependent on Social Security, and they're going to realize they can't survive, so they'll probably leave the country and try a third world country. Now, 60% of people interviewed say that they're going to have to work until the day they die. They can't retire. There's no hope of retirement. You see, it was a lot different back in the 70s, right? Okay, the 70s, you could have one person working, you could retire, you could, live off the one person income. All right. So today we make 60,000 a year, right? But okay, now the price of gold, this is just going to show you how much we have debased the currency. Price of gold about $2,200. Now, if you were the equivalent in 1971, a year's pay was 275 ounces of gold. Now today, 275 ounces of gold would be approximately $600,000. That would be equivalent to what the average income was back in 1971. $600,000. Now with $600,000, you could have just one person working and afford a house and afford the two new cars in the driveway and send your kids to good schools and good clothes and buy the luxuries and take 2 vacations a year. If you were making $600,000, well, what's happened? The government and the Federal Reserve have debased our currency so much that it's an impossible dream right now. They make a slave out of you. Basically, you're working for $60,000 a year. That's the average. Now, that's the average. You cannot buy a house. You cannot buy a new car. You cannot live in a good area. You have a problem, right? We debased the currency. Now, look at our country, a lot of people think that's great, but I do not think that it's going in the right direction. They're going to continue to print money, and all fiat currencies go away. They just disappear. They go away. They don't survive. We've been 50 years as a fiat currency. Fiat currency is one that's not backed by anything. It's kind of like a Bitcoin. People get upset when I say that, but Bitcoin's not backed by anything. But Mike, Bitcoin's backed by that mathemagic stuff. Yeah, they got the math back, and then maybe they do. All right. Well, anyways, the U.S. dollar is a fiat currency, been a fiat currency since 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard. Okay, so 50 years we've been debasing the currency. Now, I would argue that right now, as Main One Event pointed out, that right now the price of gold is at a record high. high, right? Record high, $2,200 an ounce. But I would argue that it's even cheaper now than it was when it was $35 an ounce back in 1971. Why? Why is it cheaper now? Because of all the currency we printed, because of the debasement of the currency. You're going to see gold take off. Now, we're seeing that now. You notice how it's spiking up to a record high. Now, I'm not saying it's just going to take off and go to the moon. I'm not a moon boy. Nothing goes straight up. This could have a pullback. It could go back below 2,000 an ounce. I'd be buying with both hands if it does. But look, it's going straight up and nothing's happened yet. Everything's been normal, right? There's been no real crisis going on. I mean, we're having the best economy ever. We're not at war, as they'll tell you. We're not in a recession. The economy is booming. These are the good times, and you should enjoy these times. These are very good times. I'll be the first to admit that, because it's going to get a lot worse from here, okay? It's going to get a lot worse from here. Why? Why? Because they're going to keep printing money. A lot of people would say, Mike, it's not printing money, it's borrowing money. They're going to keep borrowing money, sending us farther into debt. Now, as far as Social Security goes, we just got a raise on Social Security, right? I mean, I don't know. It had a cost of living raise, 8% or something a year ago. But look, they don't have the money anymore. They don't have the money. They spent the money. It's a big Ponzi scheme. Our government has really done us no favors. I mean, zero favors. And of course, we have to pay the Federal Reserve their 2% every year because that's their cost of doing business. Look, you get rid of the Federal Reserve and throw these guys out of office and we take back our country, then I'll get a little bit of hope. But there's not much hope right now. The dollar is going to go away. They're going to debase the dollar until it is at zero, right? Until no amount of dollars will buy you an ounce of gold. That's how far it's going to get debased. Every fiat currency ends the same way. That's the same way. Think Zimbabwe. Think Weimar Germany now. Weimar Germany, right? A lot of people have the argument, but Mike, if we go to hyperinflation, my house is going to be worth $1 billion, and it may well be. But in terms of real money, it's going to drop by 80 to 90%. Weimar Germany, the house is, well, I mean, maybe $1 trillion, right? Okay, but look, in real money, you could buy a whole city block for 25 ounces of gold. 25 ounces of gold in Weimar Germany gets you a whole city block. Think about Zimbabwe, $1 trillion for a house, right? Now, are you a house rich? No, you're a house poor. Okay, here's the thing. Here's why houses, you think it's a hedge against inflation, but it's really not. It's because it's a debt asset. Most people have debt. They have a mortgage on it. They have to buy the house with a mortgage, right? So it's a debt asset, and it's, if your house is free and clear, yeah, it'll do all right for you, right? But as a debt asset, no, it's not going to do all right for you. It is not going to hold up against gold. It's not going to hold up against silver. And I keep saying 500 ounces of silver will soon get you, well, nobody knows the time frame. I'll be honest with you. I don't know the time frame. Do I think it'll be 10 years? No, I think it'll be much shorter than 10 years. Do I think it'll be 5 years? No, I think it'll be shorter than 5 years. 3 years? That's probably a good guess. Okay, at some point, if the reset happens where 500 ounces of silver buy you the average price home. Now, Main Event One, he thinks that it's going to be much more extreme than that. He thinks I'm too conservative when I say, and he could be right. I keep saying gold will be 1-to-1 with the Dow. What's the Dow at? Well, they're trying to push that Dow up to 40,000, right? Will gold go to 40,000? Maybe it works that way, but maybe the Dow gets cut in half and they meet at 20,000. Maybe the Dow loses 90% and they meet at 4,000. It's hard to say, but I'm calling for 1-to-1 with the Dow. Now, he thinks it's going to be much more extreme. He thinks that I'm too conservative. I love the guy. I mean, he could be right. I mean, we have printed so much money by debasing our currency that there's no return. We can't get out of the mess we're in. But my argument is that gold at $2,200 is as cheap as it was when gold was at $35 $25 in 1971, due to the amount of money that we printed, due to that I see no end to the amount of money that we print. You see, here's the thing. Once they started QE1, I don't even know what year that was. What was that, 2008, 2009? I don't know. Well, once they started QE1 with the printing press just running, there's no return. You can't stop printing. You cannot. You cannot stop. There's no way they could stop. Everything would crash so hard. Look at. You don't have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. All you have to do is pass one law saying the Federal Reserve can no longer print one more dollar that they don't have, right? If you stop them from printing that one more dollar, they're powerless. They can't do anything to hurt us anymore. Because right now they're doing extreme damage. They're hurting us by debasing our currency. And this is not going to be a pretty picture. It's not going to end well. Look, gold and silver are not the complete answer. You're going to need supplies. You're going to need food for sure, stock away extra water. You're probably going to need some protection. It's going to be a little bit, well, it's not going to be really pretty. So these are just suggestions, right? You do what you want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. A lot of people are betting on the greenback being that dollar bill. I'm not betting on it. It ain't going to survive. Just my take. How long? Maybe it's 3 years out still. I hope and pray we got that much time. I don't think we do. Maybe it's only a year out. Maybe it happens next week. Nobody really knows. I'm not here to scare you. I'm just here kind of as telling you what I'm doing. I'm Tall Mike. You like this stuff? Give me the thumbs up. Why not? Punch that subscribe button before you get out there and enjoy your day. Bye-bye now.